All right. Good morning, everyone. So it's good to have you all here. As always, the house is full on the spiritual side. Material side, not so much, but I think we have a lot of delays because of marathon that's happening in the city today. So I'm pretty sure people still keep on arriving and coming. But we're going to start with our lecture today. Today, we're going to be talking about the law of destruction. But as always, before we start our lecture, we're going to have our initial reading done by our friend Tanya, and then we're going to have our initial prayer done by our friend Denise. Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. Let's start reading this book, Happy Life, Divaldo Pereira Franco by Joana de Angelis. Do all you can to keep your healthy. Many illnesses are caused by maladjusted temperaments, emotions out of alignment, or negative spiritual influences. Anxiety, fear, pessimism, anger, jealousy, and hatred are responsible for diseases, yet to be catalogued and undermine physical, emotional, and mental health. Try to keep calm, cultivating good thoughts that will provide you with inestimable benefits as you are mentally, so you be your existence.
Thank you, Tanya. So now let's close our eyes, empty our minds, concentrate on the teachings that will be received today. We ask our dear God, Jesus, our Master, and all the TSS mentors that are here today to enlighten our friend Teresa on their lecture of today, and also for them to help us to open our hearts in receiving those teachings. So be it.
Thank you, Denise. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the law of destruction. I had prepared some PowerPoints today, but we're not going to be able to use it because I don't have anybody to help us with them. But we're going to do it without the PowerPoints anyways. Okay. So law of destruction. So in the Spirit's book, there is a part. The Spirit's book is divided in 4 parts. And part 3 of the Spirit's book is called the moral laws. And there, each chapter is going to talk about a different law. So you have started with natural law, you have the law of society, law of freedom, law of justice and charity. And then chapter 5 is the law of conservation. And right after comes chapter 6, which is called the law of destruction, which is very weird because you just had finished reading the law of conservation that tells us about how it's important for you to conserve, how it's important for us to, preserve our lives. And then right after starts a law of destruction. And it's so weird that it's exactly how Kardec starts the chapter, right? He starts the chapter in question 722 asking, is destruction a law of nature? Because that's the first thing that he wants to know, because it exists and exists because we see destruction all the time in front of us. Is this a law of nature? Right? And the answer from the spirits is, it is necessary for everything to be destroyed in order to reborn and regenerate. What you call destruction is no more than transformation that is aimed at renewing and improving living beings. So this is the first concept right here. He changed completely this concept of destruction, right? So it says, yeah, what you call destruction, we call transformation. It's because before our eyes, they were so attached to this material life that when we see the natural disasters that happens, or even wars, we see this as all destruction. That's what we see. The spirit's plan is looking and say, oh, there's a lot of transformation happening in here. Because in the end, that's what destruction it is, right? We're here right now standing, and we are in Toronto, this beautiful city, an amazing city that we all call home, or some of us call home. I think some of us are not from Toronto, but I travel a little bit longer, but we all kind of from here, from the area. And Toronto was not here 300 years ago. What was here had to be destructed so we could build this city, right? Otherwise, the city is not going to be here. So we see as destruction. Maybe the people at the time when we're cutting down the trees and build the streets saw it being destruction. To us today, we see a transformation. We transform this area from an empty land to a city. So a transformation, right? Every time a natural disaster, yeah, they destruct, but everything is renewed after, right? So really what we have, we could easily call this chapter, instead of a law of destruction, we could call a law of transformation. But Kardec is still a bit confused. So the next question, he says, okay, but you're saying the law of destruction. The destruction is a law. It's part of the natural law. It's about transformation, that the old has to be destroyed so the new one can reborn and you can rebuild. But we just talk about the law of conservation. Like I'm a bit confusing here. So he asking us, if destruction is necessary for the regeneration of beings, why does nature surround them with the means of self-preservation and conservation? Because it is true, we have it innate in us. If someone tries to attack, you defend, right? It's part of us. We need to defend of us. And he explains to prevent a destruction, arriving earlier. Let's be honest, life is not easy, right? There's some kinds of love to maybe this kind of a bit earlier, right? But it's still here. And it's still Friday, and we have this resignation, we go, because we have this law of conservation, right? Because every time anything that is destroyed before time, it retards the development of the intelligent principle. Because that's also what it is. We always forget the intelligent principle, forget us as a spirit who are here to progress. So every time I shorten my existence here before time, I stop my progress. I cause actually a bigger problem here. So that's why, so then what the spirit is trying to explain to Kardec is actually this law of destruction or transformation and the conservation is actually going hand in hand. They don't, they are not opposite to each other. It's actually quite the opposite. They go hand in hand, right? Because also through the law of destruction or conservation, that's how we survive. That's where we destroy certain areas to build up cities so we can have a better living conditions. In the old times, would go and get our arrow and go out and hunt and kill an animal so we could eat. Aren't we destroying that animal? Yes, we are. So we can survive. So we can fulfill the law of conservation. So that's what we destruction here is also transformation. I'm transforming that animal in food. And then at the time we used everything actually, right? At the time we used their bones, used their skin to cover ourselves. We did everything with it. We transforming in something else, right? Because our bodies need it. So in the end, this law of destruction is not contrary to law of conservation. They actually go hand in hand. One helps the other and helps the progress to happen. And this law of so in the end, in nature, nothing is really destroyed. Nothing. Everything is just transformed. And science knew that already, right? So Lavoisier in the 18th century was a French chemistry, and he told us, right? He said, in nature, nothing is lost, nothing is created, everything is transformed. And I did a little research, apparently this phrase, which is said it comes from me. It actually does not really come from him. There's no proofs that he ever said this phrase, but this phrase is said that it comes from Lavoisier because it really represents his research. What he was the first guy to learn about the conservation of mass, and what he realized when he was doing as a chemistry, working with chemistry, he realized that when you put two things together and they change, you're not actually create, because people thought, oh, we create a new element, and you realize, no, we're not creating anything, we're just transforming, because the molecules in there are exactly the same. Nothing was destroyed, they're just changed, their configuration. But the atoms of oxygen, nitrogen, whatever is composing there is exactly the same. They just now shift and combine in a different way, and they become a different substance, right? It's the same thing with water. If you get water, right, it's liquid, you apply some heat, and then it will evaporate and create vapor. But we create vapor, but the vapor is the same, it's the same molecules. They just now combine in difference, the same oxygen, the same hydrogen, but they're now combined in a different way. So now instead of being in a liquid format, they're vapor, right? But we didn't create a new element. The elements are the same, the molecules are the same. We just transformed them. And that's everything in nature is just transformed in our material world, right? But actually, even Lavoisier in the 18th century didn't bring anything new, any new concept that someone didn't had said before. Because Anaxagoras, which was a Greek philosopher 500 years before Christ, already said that. He said, nothing is born or perishes, but already existing things combine and separate again. So 500 years before Jesus, there is already a philosopher who had this concept. That here in nature, nothing is born, nothing is lost. It's just transforming, right? And they're right, because that's what the law of destruction brings to us. This concept that everything is changing. What science didn't understand at the time, and today kind of didn't, still not really understanding, is that this law doesn't apply just to the material world. It applies to the moral as well. Applies to the spiritual world, apply to us as moral beings. So we also, nothing is destroyed. So when a loved ones discarnate, they're not being destroyed. It's just they're both being transformed, the body and the spirit. The body now it's going to be transformed in soil again, will decompose and be back to the soil. And the spirit is being transformed orally, because the spirit is like the same, but it's becoming orally changed. Because every time we discarnate, every time we reincarnate, it's a period of change. It's a choice, it's a chance for us to change and modify and going ahead, right? So the material world goes through this process of destruction or transformation as much as the spiritual world. And the reason they're both are constantly transforming, they're both constantly being destructed and renewed and built again, is because they're both are subject to the laws of progress. We're all here to progress. Planet Earth is progressing as a mature world, as a planet. It's progressing, right? So today it's known that it's believed through science that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, right? Let's just go back 1 billion years ago. The only thing that we had in our atmosphere was dust and gas. A zero living being, because there's no conditions to have living beings in it. But Earth kept progressing or transforming or destructing and renewing in a moment that now we have the planet the way we are. So eventually it cooled down, the gases went away, the water was formed. So it's transforming, right? Because if you haven't destructed the world from 1 billion years ago, we wouldn't be living in here because it had to be renewed. So now we can hear, we can breathe, we can, be here and doing it. So Earth is progressing and progressed over the 4.5 billion years Yeah. Did it stop progressing? Not at all. It's still progressing. And science knows that very easy. We know the tectonic plates is still shifting. That's why from time to time I have earthquakes in some places. Volcanoes is still active. I was just reading this thing about volcanoes. I was listening to someone talk about volcanoes. They said the volcanoes is like the pressure. You have a pressure pan, and you have the valve that lets some pressure to skip from time. So it doesn't, because if you get too much pressure, the pan is going to explode. That's what a volcano is. It's the shifting and, and all the hot and pressure they're having inside of Earth. And from time to time, has to release some pressure. Otherwise, we're going to, shift a bit more than we would like to, right? That's what it is. It's because planet is progressing. It's evolving. It's transforming, right? Does it cause a little bit of destruction? Yes, it does. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and all the natural disasters that we see in nature. But they're natural. They're part of the law of progress. This planet is progressing. Right? And so it is. We are doing that as well. If you're looking at, I had like actually quite funny picture to put in here for you guys to see. We're progressing. Our bodies, we're progressing materially and we're progressing morally. Because if you look through the anthropologists and research and everything, and all the bones that they had found, they have the pictures. You can go and Google the pictures of, how they believe that our bodies were, right? And in the beginning, they even believed that we used our hands as well to walk, mostly because we probably copied the animals, and then all of a sudden you're evolving a bit more intellectually, morally, then we're standing, walking two legs, and then in the end, it has a fat guy like drink his McDonald's stuff, right? So at some point we start to, kind of go down now. But we physically, as human beings, we evolved. Nobody goes anymore to the office and finds someone with a body like the caveman, right? We don't, because evolved, that kind of a body was destroyed, doesn't exist anymore. So it's replaced for new bodies, for more appropriated bodies to us, right, these days. So we evolved. Even human beings, materially, we evolved. We have different bodies now, right? But morally as well. Because morally, if you look to us today, we are way better than we were under the caveman. We were simple and ignorant, right? And then slowly we evolved intellectually, morally. We know that kind of not going hand in hand as they should, but we did. We are better people today than we're there. Because our old self, slowly, through the centuries, to the millennia, had to be destroyed so a new one could come in. Destroying a sense of, again, transformation. Because if I keep here attached, like that's why I'm not change. I give no space for me to change. I give no space for me to renew myself, to become someone else, right? But we give. Thank God we give. We give the chance to become a little bit better through the many incarnations and reincarnations that we go through. Right? And this brings us to actually what I wanted to talk today. The two types of destruction that we have, that this chapter brings to us. The necessary destruction and the abusive destruction, because there's two types in there. So the necessary destructions are exactly the destructions that we were talking about, the natural disasters. Tsunamis, earthquakes, cyclones, hurricanes, the floods that we have, right? Those are what they call necessary. And why they're necessary? Because Kardec asked, like, why we need them? And the Spirit said to help to progress a bit faster. Because you guys are kind of slow. And so we need to kind of push you guys. Because every time you have something that happens and hurts you, you try to mitigate that pain. How much technology and knowledge we don't have these days because of all the calamities that happened in the past. Right? So Japan now, an island, a country that's an island, has been hit historically by so many earthquakes that they create a technology that their high rises are built with this foundation. Then when you have an earthquake, it actually shifts with the earthquake. So instead of having something that's stiff and with earthquakes, cracks, and falls, it shifts with the earthquake. So the chance of one of the horizons to fall down, it's much smaller. We have to have like, it's going to be like a earthquake, like way beyond anyone that I have in history, right? But for now, they can withstand earthquakes, and they have many through the years. Many. Most of them are very light. People don't even feel, but they have many. And shifting technology. Why we got to this technology? Because we went through pain before, right? And actually, it's the same technology that these days is using to create utensils for people with Parkinson's. Imagine you have like a, your Parkinson's is already advanced. You're shaking your hand, try to eat. By the time the spoon's in your mouth, your food's already fell. So the same technology that's using for the builds in Japan is using for the utensils. So no matter how much you shake, actually the part where you have the food stays still, and they are able to feed themselves. Create better quality of life to us, to the people with Parkinson. Well, we got there because we went through earthquakes. Right? 2004, we had a tsunami that hit Indonesia in a matter of minutes. It killed over 150,000 people, and in total, more than 200,000 people, the people who died after because of the injuries from the tsunami. In a matter of hours, we have the whole world mobilizing, sending first response teams, sending medical aid, food, clothing, everything to help the area. Why? Because the disaster awakened us the necessity of being charitable, the necessity of looking into the pain of the other and understand the meaning of fraternity, to understand that we're here in this world to help each other. We need to have a calamity, and from time to time we need the calamity to remind us why we're here, right? Right now we're having a flood in Quebec. Neighbors are helping each other. Neighbors that probably never even look at each other now are helping each other. If the flooding hadn't existed, if problems didn't exist, how would we practice and learn how to be charitable to each other? Everything's fine. I don't even need to know what's happening with you. I mean, okay, fine, I'm fine. We're good, right? So they come. So that's why the Spirit say that those calamities, they're necessary to say, because then you can progress in 100 years will normally take you 1,000. Because you'll be so accommodated that you will never think about helping the others, you never think about learning the laws of love and charity. And that's what it's about, right? So that's why they're necessary. But then Kardec has a question. Say, okay, I understand it's necessary. I know it'll be lotus learning, but isn't there other way to do it? It's I don't know. Before we just spank the kids, now we just talk to them, anything will be lighter. So that's why he asked the spirits. Is that the only way to teach us? And so in the question 338, he asked him, couldn't God employ other methods instead of destructive calamities to improving humankind? And he says yes. And he does it on a daily basis. Right? See, they are employed every day. Through the knowledge of good and evil, God has given to each of you the means of progressing. So did we need to get time out to learn? No, we don't. But the problem is that just your mother come and say, that's the wrong thing to do, don't do it. It's not enough for us to learn. So apparently, we like to learn by pain. We like to learn by, getting some time out. Apparently, that's we learn faster, right? I told the story here before. When I was a child, I was about 2 years old, 2.5. I like to go with my finger on the outlet. And if you're as old as me or older, you know what I'm talking about, the outlets before, not just like now. The metal part come all the way out. Put your finger there, you're going to feel it. So I always go, my mom, no. I was like, Until one day she decided to have a brilliant idea and said, I'll let her do it. Because my mom, who knows nothing about electricity, thought she's going just with one finger, so she's only going to half of the energy. Yeah, she was already saying, no, not at all. Exactly. I got the full 110 volts. No need to say that until I was a teenager, I was afraid of even plugging stuff on the wall. Okay, learned quite quickly to do not put my finger on the outlet. That's what we do, because apparently that's how we just learn. And actually, I was reading this and came right away to my mind the book 2,000 years ago, the very famous conversation between the very proud Senator Publio Lentulus, which is one of the reincarnations from Emmanuel, talking with Jesus. Jesus right there, the moment that Jesus was reincarnated on earth. And Jesus asked Publius, said, Publius, you can follow me now by love, or you can follow me in 1,000 years by pain. And if you read the book, you know which choice he made it, right? He chose by pain. So if anything, every day when we wake up, that's the question that Jesus does for us in the morning. Like, so today, you're gonna learn or transform yourself by love or by pain. Every single day, you have a chance to make this transformation by love or by pain. I don't need to say what choice we make most of the days, right? I think kind of very close to Publius Lentulus, right? Most of the time used by pain. So that's why the calamities are needed, right? To waken us up, to make us to progress actually faster, to understand the laws of love and charity faster, right? Help us to grow morally, help us to grow intellectually, right? So what is the abusive destruction then? What's the abusive destruction? I think it's a little bit easy to figure out that one, right? So war, for example. War is the perfect example of the abusive destruction. War was never part of the plans of God. War seems created by us, human beings, created by our greedy, our selfishness, our pride, and our vanity. Because there's not a single war in history of humanity that was not based on those sentiments. The desire to have more power, to desire to, my vanity to show that I'm stronger than the others, we're more powerful, the greedy of I want more and more and more. And that's what it is. That's not part of God's plan. But in the Spirit's book, Kardec asks, are wars necessary? And the Spirit says they are. But they are not necessary in the means that they're part of God's plan. They are necessary because there is also another law that's called law of action and reaction. So they become necessary because we have to be responsible for our actions. So we're going to have to go through the results of our own choices as a society, as a humanity. So then it becomes necessary. It's like me putting my finger in the outlet. The spirits are here, incarnated and discarnated around us. We have access through history. And if anything, the last 2,000 years after Jesus came, more than ever, we know what's right and wrong, right? But still choosing to create wars. So then we're going to have to suffer the consequence of them. Law of action and reaction. Because it's going to get to one point that's going to hurt so much that we're going to realize, I do not want a war anymore, right? And we see the movement already in humanity. We're tired of war, right? Every time now we have war, we have more and more people around the world say, stop it. We don't want to do this anymore. How much more destruction can we do, right? We're trying to see each other as more like a human beings and brothers and sisters. Yes, we still have a lot of prejudice out there, but we are starting out to, because with this global community that we have now, and we know what's happening all around the world now, we're starting to see more other people's pain. We're starting to fight more for something that's not happening on my backyard, but it's happening on someone else's backyard, right? And that comes from learning from our own mistakes, from our abusive destruction, because they are not necessary and they're not part of God's plans. We created them, but we're going to have to harvest what we seeded. And then by paying, and again, we're going to have to learn. We're going to transform ourselves, become better moral beings, and then we won't create wars anymore, because that's the only way that we're going to stop them. Another type of abusive destruction is when we destroy nature more than what we need. So there's a huge difference of me going and hunting for food, and I use that food and then I feed my family, and I even used everything. And actually our native populations in the past, they didn't just kill the animals to eat, and they used absolutely everything. They didn't waste anything. They used the bones, the skin, everything was used there. Nothing's wasted. And when they used to go to hunt, they hunted only what was necessary for that day or for that week. If they're fishing, how many fishes I need? I need 10 fishes from my family today. I'll fish 10 fishes. I'll catch 10. Tomorrow, I'll go fish again. Right? That's how they did what was needed. Nothing more. They didn't go and hunt to say, oh, look how amazing I do, like we do these days with our illegal safaris. Because most of countries now, especially in Africa, is illegal. But we go there and do it just so why? So I can put my foot on top of the animal and take a picture and say, look how amazing I did it. Look at this elephant that I killed, or this lion that I killed. Look how amazing I am, how powerful I am. Because in a cowardly way, I killed an animal for no reason but my vanity. That's abusive destruction. When we see things like in Amazon in Brazil, when our forest is being destroyed just because I wanted to extend my farms illegally, because I want more and more and more, that's abusive destruction. Because that's going to have a consequence when we destroy the, nature more than what we should. And we've seen this already, right? That's abusive destruction. When big corporations have their industry and they poison rivers, the soil, the air for profit, destroying nature around, destroying people's health around, who live around that corporation. And even worse, knowing it. They know it. So they choose to do because it's cheaper. It's convenient for me than put the proper filters and systems in place. That's abusive destruction. And we're going to be 100% responsible for it. This is completely different than an earthquake, than nature itself and a natural process shifting and progressing. This is caused by us. And it's caused by greedy, selfishness, and the desire for power. So that's abusive destruction. Completely different from necessary. That's not necessary at all. Okay. So we need to think about it. We need to think about it, right? What are we doing to our planet? What are we doing to ourselves? How much are we contributing for this abusive destruction? Right? And I even talk a bit here about material destruction, because when we do those destroy nature, we're talking about like destroying our material world, our material bodies, when we poison rivers that will poison people's health. But how about destructing people's hope, destructing people's happiness also out of, vanity, pride, right? We can put people down as well, destroy the best that they have inside of them. Instead of enhancing the good, we put them down. That's abusive destruction as well. Moral abusive destruction. We need to think about that. Right? But it's through our transformation morally that we're going to stop this abusive destruction, because as it pains and as it hurts and as we change as a society, and through the multiple incarnations that we come, we're going to better ourselves and automatically make better choices. And then it's going to have a moment where we're going to choose to do not have those abusive distractions, and they're not going to be necessary anymore because we already learned. We don't need to create them. We don't need to learn through them. Yeah. And then we want to have the necessary ones there, but not the abusive ones anymore. And then I want to talk, since we're talking about destruction and we're talking about necessary destruction and abusive destruction, I want to bring one last subject, that it's the destruction, the one that we're all waiting, the one that's in the gospel, right? The end of the days. Isn't that what we're waiting? Some people have a date for it, right? It's amazing, right? They have a date for it. The end of the days, aka known as the Armageddon, the apocalypse, right? We're all waiting for it, right? The day that the earth is gonna be destroyed. Right? So to talk about that, I got this chapter from the Spiritist magazine from 1866. And it's a psychographic message from a spirit. And actually, psychographic message was received in Paris in April 1866. It was only published in the volume in October. And we know Kardec would never publish anything without studying it first, without reviewing and make sure before publish. That's why he received it in April, only published in October. Right? And this message talks exactly about that, about regeneration of humanity. It's a very, very long message, like the whole, it's chapter 70 of the Spiritist magazine. It's very long, so I'm just going to bring some points from it. It's a very interesting one. But it talks about the regeneration of humanity. And the Spirit starts saying, right, he starts already the message saying, we used to say that the times are coming, but now I'm here to say that the times are here. They're not coming anymore, right? They're here. And he was talking about that. He's talking about this time, the time of the ends of the days, right? The apocalyptical messages in the Gospels. It's here already. It's not coming anymore. It's here. It's 1866, okay? More than 100 years ago. Okay. You say, but we should not be waiting for a new deluge, like when Noah had one and had to build an ark. You should not be waiting for a cataclysm. Stop looking to the skies to try to find this end of the world. He's saying, partial destruction of the planet by cataclysm will keep occurring. You see, because natural disasters always existed and now it's going to keep existing because Earth is naturally progressing. It's maturing, it's progressing, it's transforming, it's getting better and better. So cataclysms, hurricanes, earthquakes, everything happened before. That's not new. It's still happening now, and it's going to keep happening. And it has nothing to do with the end of the days. It has nothing to do with the apocalypse. But every time we have one of those, right, tsunami, we had a earthquake now in Turkey, we had, explosions and things will happen in volcanoes now active. It's like, oh, see, that's the sign of the end of the days. And he goes, no, stop it. It has nothing to do with the Armageddon. It has nothing to do with the end of this. It's just nature. Happen, still happen. It's going to keep happening. It's just part of the natural transformation of planet Earth. It's a natural process. It's going to keep going, regardless if you're here or not here. It's going to keep going, right? He says, but everything that's predicted in the gospel is going to be fulfilled. See, right? So the problem is that over time, we took everything that was written in the gospels literal. Instead of understanding it was just a figurative image of the end of the world. Right? So Spiritism comes and brings the key for us to understand better what the end of the world means, what the end of the days mean, what this Armageddon's going to be. And the key is called reincarnation. So with the Spiritism now we understand, and everything has to renew, has to transform. So as a spirit, we're gonna keep coming and rotating and get better and discarnate and reincarnate and get better. And morally, we start to evolve, right? So there's no real destruction. And the spirits come to us and say, hey, there's what your mature eyes see as a destruction. We hear saying like, oh, it's transforming. That's so beautiful. It's actually good. Not the best path of transformation, the better choice, but but it's transforming regardless, right? So what he brings to us, the spirit says, the end of the world is not material. The end of the world is moral. That's what he says. So what's happening right now is that humankind arrived to a point of transformation, a key point, because we're transforming all the time, but we're arriving to a key point of transformation, which in Spiritism we talk a lot about, the planetary transition from a planet of expiation to a planet of regeneration. So the destruction is going to be of this planet of expiation, morally talking, to a planet of regeneration. That's what it is. So that's what's going to be ended. That's what's going to be destroyed in the sense of transformation, the moral world. And in some ways, the spiritual world. So the kind of spirits that are going to be incarnated, they'll be allowed to incarnate on planet Earth, are changing, but changing slowly. Okay. So basically what's going to end is this period where selfishness, pride, vanity, prejudice, fanaticism are going to lead us. Because right now they're kind of leading us. Right now, when you look the bad and the good, we still kind of hear the bad, the good still here. We're still living in a world that's pretty much led by, pride. Look around. How many wars we have right now? We just have a new one started in Sudan. Pride, vanity, selfishness, right? But it's shifting. It started now. In 1866, spirits are saying it started. Slowly, those spirits are no longer going to reincarnate in here. They're going to be invited to reincarnate in inferior planets. And inferior, we're talking about morally and intellectually, right? And those spirits are saying, oh, so they're going to be punished. And say, no, it's not punishment. They just don't fit here anymore. It's literally an invitation, and I'm not being sarcastic. It's an invitation to go to another planet, would be more appropriate for them to keep progressing. But with them, they're going to bring all the knowledge inside of them, because remember, the law of progress, nobody regresses. Everything that they have absorbed by living in this planet that we are, intellectually and morally, is going to go with them. And they're those going to help those planets to progress. So see how beautiful it is? Because when they're going to go there, they're going to encounter people who are even less evolved than they are. So they're the ones going to help them to progress. By instinct, they're going to bring with them everything that they learn here and going to help those planets too. Just like the spirits from Capella did with us. Just like we did. Probably someone was kicked out of another planet and came here, 5,000 years ago to help to grow here. And now we're better, right? So that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And those necessary destruction or transformation or even the abusive are helping with this process, right? A lot of those spirits are being discarnated, who are no longer incarnating in here, right? And then when we take those spirits, then we become a planet of regeneration in a very slow way. There's no jumps in progress, not morally, not material. It's going to be slowly. It's not that someday I'm going to wake up like, oh my gosh, today's a day of the planet of growth. There's no such a thing. It's slowly. However, these days, the way the planet Earth it is speeding up a little bit, right? The way it's going, it is getting into this process of transformation is getting a little bit faster, right? So slowly, all those wicked spirits who are our brothers and sisters are going to be invited to go somewhere else. But one I think is nice, one thing that he brings in the messages, the spirit brings a message that I think was very nice. He says that spirits who maybe, let's say, in this last incarnations here, are still kind of wicked, kind of turn to the wrongdoings. But if in some moment they wake up, and let's say if I had a reincarnation here, was a very wicked spirit, I didn't understand the laws of love and charity. But when I disconnect, I wake up and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm wrong. I do want to change. I'm now I understand how important it is to do the good, and I want to learn. They're going to be allowed to stay. Because the world of a generation doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect and going to start. Now we're going to be nice to each other. No, we still be the same people, imperfect. But the desire to do good inside of us is going to be bigger than my desire to do something that's not good. Still not perfect. We're not going to be, not even close to be perfect. Emmanuel made me very clear to us that right now we're closer to that primitive man in the cave than we are from a pure spirit. Okay. But what's going to happen in this world of regeneration is that it's going to be kind of a 50-50. Martin Tuni says that in one of her lectures, 50-50. Right now, it's not 50-50. Right now, the good's kind of a little bit. But to us, those spirits are invited to go to other planets, and more evolved the spirit starts to incarnate here, which is already happening, right? We start to be equal. But because the desire to do good is going to be bigger in us, this 50% is going to be easier to attract the other 50 to do the good and progress. So we're not going to have wars. We're not going to have, yes, we're going to have wrongdoings happening, but not the abuse of destruction that we see right now. No more wars. We don't want this anymore. So we slowly, as a planet of regeneration, we start to better ourselves to finally one day become a planet of happy spirits, right? So that's what the end of the day is this moral transformations, this destruction of this planet of expiation to become a planet of regeneration. That's how we should understand the apocalypse when we read it in the gospel. That's where it should end. Understand. It's not the end of the material world. It's the end of the moral world as we know right now. Okay. So, like it says here, don't keep looking to the sky. Some people think, oh, it's a comet that's going to come and it's going to hit the earth and it's going to kill the same way they killed all the dinosaurs and things. It's not going to happen. And in fact, at some point he says, don't look to the sky or to the natural disasters for the signs of the end of the world. Look to ourselves as a society. 1866 in this message, he says, when the time's really like getting in there, he says the amount of suicide amongst young people, including children, will increase. That's exactly what's happening in our society right now. The statistics show that now kids at the age of 10 years old are committing suicide. So if one, and it's increasing the number of suicide among children and teenagers. When I was 10 years old, I didn't know that there was an option. I didn't know that word. Okay, I didn't know that word. I was just worrying about playing, going to school, and think what my mom cooked for dinner. And if you had popcorn for the afternoon lunch break. That's it. 10 years old these days are committing suicide. He said, look morally what's happening around you. Then you're going to see the signs of the end of the times. When fathers are going to be against children, children against father, all that described in the gospel. Look morally. Don't look for natural disaster. Don't look for material disaster of the planet. Planet's going to be exactly the same as it is. It's morally that we're going to change. So I invite you guys, so I'm going to end with inviting you guys to read these 4 books, amazing books. Used to be a trilogy, but then in 2020, they added an extra book by Divaldo Pereira Franco, by the spirits of Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. It starts with a book called Planetary Transition. So if you want to know more about this planetary transition, what is this destruction? That's why it's not called Planetary Destruction, the book. It's called Planetary Transition. what it's about. It starts with the book. First one was released in 2010. It talks actually about the tsunami in Indonesia in 2004 and how what happened really in the spiritual plan during this tsunami. So, and understands all this process of transformation in the area, physical, because the tsunami came in and destroyed, but especially morally. And we understand why that area was the one affected, what happened, and what kind of spirits most were affected. So, how was the rescue in the spiritual plan, which is absolutely beautiful, right? So, planetary transition and how this help us to progress. Those kind of disasters that we see just the destruction, how much it helps us to progress spiritually. Then 2012 came the dawn of an era. 2015, spiritual disturbance. And now the last one, who is translated already, because last time I mentioned this book, it was not translated. It is translated now. Came in 2020. It's called On the Way of a World of Regeneration. And it's actually about the pandemic. It talks about same thing about the pandemic, what happened in the spiritual plan. It shows how the spirits have discarnated through this pandemic, some of them in a good state, some of them not in a good state, but how this pandemic also is part of this plan of transformation, this law of progress, right? This pandemic taught us, it was tough, but it taught us a lot, right? It taught, because it affected everybody in every single level of society. Nobody was free from it, right? And it helped us to somewhere, although we're disconnected, connect more, or if anything, be more now, not take for granted our connections, not take for granted of being with people, to have to work as a whole humanity to control this pandemic, or we could never have controlled this pandemic if we hadn't work as a whole world, right? They even believe that this pandemic actually delayed a little bit the war that we're having right now, right? Some of the wars that we're having right now. And even if delayed for a year or two, that's great, right? So they're all learning opportunities. So instead of a destruction, let's think about transformation. I really invite you guys to read the books. They're amazing. They're really good. So we can understand a little bit more, and maybe instead of being worried about this end of the days, we were going to embrace it as something positive. And I truly believe that we're going to find us here in this world of regeneration together. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We kind of don't have an MEC today, so anybody has any questions or any comments? No comments on the internet, no.
Well, thank you, Teresa. That was very interesting. Just more of a point. The law of destruction, we often read it and study it, but we don't realize that it was the first law enacted, because it's the Big Bang that started the whole universe. And that was the biggest destruction we've ever seen. So it's necessary. It is what allows us to be here and allows us to do all of the other laws, the laws of attraction, laws of progress, laws of society. They wouldn't exist without the law of destruction.
Exactly. And even when we create like a simple ignorant, like the caveman, the primitive, we pretty much, that's the thing, we're just trying to survive, right? That's what we did the whole time. It's true. And planets, now we know, right? Science, planets are constantly disappearing. So new ones are coming. So it's always a transformation in nature, right? Any other comments? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned about the pandemic, because when you were talking, I was talking about our society, the transformation, what's going on, because it seems to me with the news all the time, it's always killings, and every Sunday when I come, it's like, 8 more dead in Texas, and then I see, wow, again, seems very often things, those kind of killings, destructions coming. And also, the pandemic, I thought myself that the pandemic, like you said, people were going to be more united, giving more value to be together, to value the relationships that you have. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I think that was my thought, but I'm seeing people seems to be more distant. The way that life has changed these 3 years now.
Yeah, 3 years.
People seems like very isolated. I see at work like we are much more away from each other. So please help me to understand how this pandemic really has, I think, has helped in a lot of ways, but in terms of
Relationships. Yeah.
togetherness, I don't know.
I think this is part of the transformation. We get used and we get very comfortable to being on our own. As before, we had all this flash of lights going there. And I'm a true believer that it changed in a way that now when you choose to be with somebody, it's more real. It's more something that you really want to do because you know what it is to be by yourself. So it's not something that society calls you upon doing. You doing by your own choice. So I think there is a transformation in that sense, and I think it's more real. I think it's more true than before. That's my own perspective.
So what we need to understand as well is that we wanted transformations to be like this, and they don't exist like this. The progress is slowly. I don't change like this. I was not a bad person yesterday, or selfish, or jealous, and today I woke up like today I'm not anymore. That's it. Overnight, there's no overnight transformation. So to think that this pandemic would transform overnight, just because it was a big shakeup in the whole world, and we're still feeling the consequence of this pandemic now. Pandemic is not over; it's just not a world emergency anymore. It's not over, right? But we're getting close to there. But it really shook up this world in a big way because it's the first time in a long time since 1919 that had something that affected the whole world, right? Because we had like earthquakes, is like pieces here and pieces in there. This affected the whole world. But even there, we cannot expect that next day the whole world's going to wake up different. There's no such a thing, but that's what we want. So I think that's why it's hard for us to see the small changes, because we want things to happen overnight. Overnight, I want to be happy. I want to be living in this plan of, what is this plan? I'm waiting for this plan of regeneration big time, trust me. But it doesn't happen overnight. There's no huge transformations. But think about, maybe start to think about community, think how it changed me. Because we want to see the transformations out there, is forget to see inside me, what changed me? Did it make me a better person? Did it make me to be a bit more resignated? Did it make me to value more the relationships that I had, being with my coworkers, being with my family? So then there was a transformation. We're looking for the transformation out there. Let's look inside of us. How many couples and families were going apart and came back because of the pandemic? We had the opposite as well. And that's not a bad thing either. How many couples were together just for convenience because we are busy here, we made a night, and then when they had to now be both inside the home, they realized, what are we doing? We don't even love each other enough to be together. And that's a good thing, actually, because otherwise we would have been in this accommodated life that was not fulfilling any of them, growing, going nowhere. But how many families were falling apart, and because of the pandemic, they now had to be in their home, and they actually reconnected. They found the reconnection. All of them? No, but many of them did. So we look for major, that's again, same way we look at Armageddon, look for the comet that's gonna hit the world and it's not gonna happen. We do the same with the moral. We want huge transformations, they don't exist. It's the small ones. How many people got better? How many people who had the wake up call and say, oh, there was a close one. People got COVID, end up in a hospital and get that scared to say, oh, wait a second, what I'm doing with my life? Because there was a close one, maybe I should change. Maybe I should now start to give them the right value to the right things. Small changes. And those people that changing here, and for all of us who got a little bit better through this pandemic, we're going to spread that around. The changes are small. The thing we want to look outside and see this whole community, everybody's connected and hugging each other on the streets. Please don't do it, because some stranger come to hug me on the street, I'll call the police. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So that's when it becomes hard for us to see and think, oh, I don't think the pandemic will change. I think people are apart. Yes, a lot of people's got to come. It's so much easier to work from home, and kind of forgot how good it is to be actually at work and in contact with other people. And yeah, some people now preferring to work at home. For some people, it's great actually giving them more time to be with their kids because they're not commuting. But that's what it is. Maybe that's why it's hard, because we're looking for bigger changes. The changes are small, but they go a long way. And we have to also remember that it's in the gospel. Many will be chosen. Many will be called. Few are going to be chosen. And you know that the majority of the spirits here are not staying. Right? But hopefully we are. I believe we are.
We are, and I think
Yeah.
the pandemic made us realize that we weren't in a good place before.
Mhm.
Right?
Exactly.
We're just in the momentum. We're just doing things. We're gratifying ourselves with more and more material things.
That's a
The
good point.
pandemic put a stop to that, and then we start to realize, yeah, those things weren't making me really happy.
Yeah.
But we haven't found a replacement yet.
Yeah.
We haven't found what comes next. What's going to give me that sense of gratification? Right now, unfortunately, a lot of that is through hatred that we're seeing, very strong positions, animosities, and so forth. Hopefully, we have to have faith that this will change.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very good point, Joe. That's a very good point. Yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. So thank everyone that was with us over the internet. We're hoping to see you here next week. So we're going to all prepare ourselves for our passes.